today's show.
Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 150 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you all live from the Peak. I'm, of course, your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm, just someone who hangs around here, Jeremy.
Yeah, we're back again, Matt and Jeremy, for another... this is going to be a really great episode of Matterhorn Mondays. We have a lot of great topics that we're excited to get into today, but before we get into all of that... Of course, links to all of our socials will be down in the description below. And also, if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you can do so by clicking the link down below, submitting your name and birthday in the Google form, and I'll add it to my Google Calendar here, the birthday calendar. And this week we only have one birthday, you guys. This upcoming Saturday, the 10th, is Cade Elliott's birthday. So happy birthday to Cade Elliott. And of course, happy birthday to everybody else who didn't have a chance to submit their birthday to the show. And as well, you guys can call in 575-386-5814 if you'd like to voice your opinion on any of the topics that we're going to be discussing today. We, of course, encourage that you guys call in, but, excuse me. I guess we should sort of preface this. We should preface this really every week. We love the voicemails, but we'd appreciate it if we could keep them to under a minute from all of you guys. Just because, sometimes voicemails, we get a lot of voicemails, and we don't necessarily have enough time to listen to all of them if they're, 2 or 3 minutes in length. So if you can keep your thoughts concise, if you can keep your thoughts... on the voicemail, I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. But yeah, under a minute voicemail, 575-386-5814. And like I said, we're in for a great episode today. Mishicat said it was my birthday last Saturday, September 27th, but she forgot to send it in. Happy birthday to Mishicat. Belated birthday, I should say. And
happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. And I guess before we get into the show, before we get into Matt Snaps and all that kind of stuff, I'm sure you guys have been wondering where Alex the historian has been. Alex is, he's chillaxing in Oregon. He's sort of taking a step back from the podcast, for at least for these upcoming few episodes. And he did send in a statement. I asked him if he wanted to say anything to you guys, and I'm going to go ahead and read what Mr. Alex the historian, of course, has sent in today. He said, quote, "I appreciate the support and love I've gotten on the show. The show evolves with the times, as does each of us. I'm reevaluating what I want as these times change. The show demands something different from me now than it did 3 years ago, but when we started. At the moment, I don't see myself continuing on with the show, but maybe times will change, calling me back. I'm very thankful for where the show has gotten me, and I wish for the continued success of the Matterhorn Matt channel and Matterhorn Mondays podcast." So yeah, Alex, as I'm sure you can tell from that statement, he's decided to take a little bit of a break. We're going to miss him, of course, here on the show. Of course, Alex was one of the founders, really, of not just the podcast, but of the channel in general. Alex was the first Disney YouTuber that I reached out to help with, collaborating and everything. And, I guess we owe Alex a lot. Not just me and Jeremy, but the viewers as well. So, always links to Alex's channel and his YouTube channel will be down in the description below. And I think we've had ways to support Alex financially in the description for a while now. If not, I'll go ahead and add that as well. But yeah, we're gonna miss Alex for as long as he's stepping away. But the show, of course, must continue. And here we are, you guys. Jeremy and I, episode 150 of Matterhorn
150?
Mondays. Yeah, that's kind of a big milestone. Almost
that is a milestone.
200. Yeah, but of course, it's time for everybody's favorite segment of the show. And this Matt Snaps segment will be a little different than it normally is. So let's go ahead and get right into this week's Matt Snaps. Oh, the audio's not going to play because I didn't do the thing right. But anyways, pretend the song played.
Oh God.
It's time.
No.
It's time for Matt Snaps. Maybe when Jeremy explains what this segment is going to be, I can have a chance to fix it here. So Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and explain what we're going to be doing for this week's episode of Matt Snaps today?
Tonight's a little special. It's a little different. We're gonna basically, we've ordered food. Mine came an hour ago, so it's not, it's not gonna be great, but whatever. And we're gonna eat, and we're not even gonna talk about the news. We're just gonna eat. I'm kidding. And we are gonna eat throughout the episode with your permission. And if you have some food, eat along. Eat along with us.
Yeah.
Bite by bite.
Jeremy,
yeah.
what kind of food do you have today?
I got a lot of junk food. This bag here is going to contain stuff that'll kill me. I have first of all, there's mozzarella sticks.
Nice.
It is nice. I don't think it came with the marinara sauce, which is pretty depressing.
Wait, they sent mozzarella sticks without marinara? That's kind of weird.
Yeah, I'm depressed. That's depressing. And then we have hot dogs.
Hot dogs! Well, Jeremy has hot dogs, at least. There it is. Oh, the camera's off, but there it is. Yeah, well, I went the easy route. I just have some chicken nuggets and fries from McDonald's.
I'm really pissed off about the marinara sauce. Very pissed off.
Marinara, I've never actually had mozzarella sticks, so I don't know if they're...
Oh, you don't like cheese.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I've been doing that. But yeah, I have fries.
And I have a soda.
Soda. Oh yeah, and I have what is this? Blue Powerade as well. So different kind of Matt Snaps today. Jeremy said the other day that this was gonna be called Matt Donald's because I'm eating McDonald's instead. So yeah, I have chicken nuggets, and we're gonna be, just feeling it out, just munching along with you guys while we talk about the news.
Come on, take a bite, everybody, take a bite.
Take a bite. Take a bite, everybody. Let me go ahead and get this situated here. All right. Of course.
I wish I had marinara.
I have ketchup if you want. I have Chick-fil-A sauce if you want. Does Chick-fil-A sauce go with? Probably not. Well. Anyways.
Hold on.
Oh my gosh.
It's cold.
Bree said Bree has fish tacos, so yeah, shout out to Bree for eating along with us. But of course, it's time to get into this week's news from the Peak.
We now present to you news from the Peak.
All right, for our first bit of news from the Peak today,
Yep, you messed up.
I made sure to leave ample time because I just got off work like an hour ago, and I made sure to leave ample time to do all the graphics. I made sure to get all the pictures done. I updated all the graphics here for the show today, but it appears that I've made a big boo-boo. But for our first bit, I forgot to update the graphic there for News from the Peak. But for our first bit of News from the Peak, Disney announced via social media that the next D23 convention will be held September 9th through 11th of 2022. So I believe that this is delayed a year. It was supposed to be... Oh my gosh. It was supposed to be this year, I believe, that this D23 was supposed to happen. They decided to push it to next year. And they do state in this tweet here, D23 Expo 2022 will be a celebration unlike any other. Let's see, as we give fans a first look into the incredible plans for the 100th episode of the Walt Disney Company. So that's pretty cool to hear that we're still going to be getting news of that next year, of course. But for our second bit of news from the Peak today, normally you'd be able to read it there on the little tiny graphic, but for a second news from the Peak, character meet and greets will be reopening in Tokyo and in Shanghai Disneyland. Guests will wait in a virtual queue and then be admitted to meet characters from a 6-foot distance. Looks like things are kind of starting to return to normal out there in those parks. But for our final bit of news from the Peak today. Very sad news. The last show for the Grand Floridian Orchestra, a staple of the resort, occurred this past October 3rd, and there is no news regarding if the orchestra will return or if their 32-year run at Walt Disney World is officially over. So that's, of course, layoffs we're going to be getting into later on in the episode. But Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on all of our news from the Peak topics today?
Yeah, well, I don't remember what they are now because the graphic we don't have the graphic. I'm really bummed about the Grand Floridian Orchestra. It's really a shame. Disney is about nuance and detail, and this is one of those things that is just very nuanced. I know a lot of people were arguing like, yeah, but no one goes to the Grand Floridian to see them. I'm like, yeah, that might be true, but there's still, atmosphere and a theme are still values that theme parks should have, and there's no exception with the themed resorts. So I'm pretty bummed about it, and I think they're pretty bummed about it too. D23 being moved to 2022. I think it's a combination of COVID and it aligning up with the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. So hopefully it'll be good, and maybe I'll try to go.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to a D23 expo, but I've never had the chance, sadly. Maybe 2022, 2 years from now, will be the year that we finally decide to go. But that does it for this week's news from the Peak. And like I mentioned at the top of the episode, we have a lot of great topics that we're excited to get into today. First topic, Disneyland reopening drama. You guys were talking about it yet again for like the 5th episode in a row, but news just keeps coming out in regards to this topic, and we're gonna keep covering it for you all. Second and final topic, of course, we're going to be discussing the major layoffs that have happened across the parks division. So excited to get into all of these. Like I said, just really interesting topics that we're excited to get into today. But for our first topic of the day, it is, of course, the Disneyland reopening drama. And if you guys have been following the news as of recently, I'm sure you'll be just as surprised as I have been when it comes to this topic. Now, I should preface this. These two topics are really interesting because, in my opinion, they're really intertwined with each other, so it's going to be really hard, at least for me, to... Oh, Jeremy's picture is not there. That's awkward. I'll fix that here in a second. But like I was saying, I believe these topics are really intertwined with each other, so it's going to be hard to discuss these without sort of bringing up the other, at least in my opinion. Here, let me go ahead and I'll go back to this. But yeah, it'll be hard to discuss here, in my opinion, so without discussing the other two topics. But of course, as you all have seen, I'm sure, a leaked draft of the California's reopening guidelines have surfaced online over the past week, and the leaked guidelines included the following policies. Of course, required masks as the first, park capacity limited to 25%, ride capacity limited to 50% with no indoor queues, all guests must live within a 120-mile radius of the park to be able to be admitted into the park. And finally, the county must be rated yellow in the risk level. I think we sort of brought that sort of chart that we showed, I think it was 2 or 3 episodes ago, of like the sort of phases of the state of like how they're doing when it comes to handling COVID. That's what that is about. Yellow risk level, I believe, is not the highest, but it's the second highest, if I'm remembering correctly from the guidelines and everything. Now, of course, I'm sure you guys have been following this drama. When I say drama, I mean drama. So, California's theme parks immediately pushed back on these restrictions. The largest issue was the final rule stating that the park must reside in a county rated yellow, meaning that the county must be deemed by the state to have minimal risk for coronavirus. And due to the backlash the state faced regarding the guidelines, Governor Gavin Newsom decided to postpone the release of the guidelines, even though they were to be released later last week over the weekend. And California then went on to say that they will work with the theme parks before issuing the reopening guidelines. And to top it all off, I forgot to include here in the notes, I'll just a footnote here, Bob Iger did step down from the California Economic Task Force, which is just sort of adding fuel to the whole Disneyland versus the state of California drama that we're going to be getting into. Now, Jeremy, just right off the bat, what are your thoughts here on these proposed guidelines? Do you think that the guidelines are too strict for Disney? Do you think they're maybe too lax? Just in general, what are your thoughts?
I think if those are the guidelines, I think those make sense. Again, California takes the virus more seriously than Florida does. From what I've been reading and understanding, Disney doesn't like the guidelines, and so they're continuing on this endless saga. And basically, at this point, all parties involved uh, are guilty. I think Newsom needed to be in stronger communication with Disney during this period. And I think Disney needs to just sort of follow the guidelines, whatever they are. So it's all complicated. I think there's so much more going on
Yeah.
behind the scenes that we're never going to know about, which is why it all seems so absurd. Because there has to be something going on that is causing all of this absurdity, this absurd drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is really what we should be calling it, I think, is drama between between the state and the state government and Disney. Now,
Right.
I'd like to sort of touch on, of course, links to all the articles that we refer to will be down in the description below, but I'd like to touch on the sort of wording from the state. Let me see if I can go ahead and find it here. The state said that they will be working with the theme parks. I believe this statement was given just the other day or a few days ago. The state would be working with theme parks before issuing the reopening guidelines. Now, I think that is the interesting part because from what we've been discussing the past few months or so, we've been, saying that Disney and the state have been cooperating, trying to get these guidelines working together. But then we see here Disney, of course, rejecting the leaked guidelines that were supposed to be proposed, as if they hadn't seen them at all. Like the state just sort of blindsided them with these, very strict, rightfully so strict reopening guidelines. And then, of course, we have the quote here that they're going to be working with the theme parks before they release the proposed guidelines. So that's what I sort of thought was happening from the beginning, was that the two parties were sort of, in talks. And then, of course, in recent weeks and recent months, it's come to light that they haven't really been communicating at all. So I feel like that is an interesting point to sort of touch on, Jeremy. What are your thoughts on what? Again, then we're just making I'm just making educated guesses here because, like Jeremy said, we'll really never know what kind of drama has been going on behind the scenes between these two. So just sort of making assumptions here.
Yeah.
Why have the two not been communicating back and forth when it comes to this, when all along we thought that's what was happening?
I have a very hard time believing that there's been absolutely zero communication between Governor Newsom's office or whoever's been assigned to work on this and the Walt Disney Company. I find that very, very hard to believe. What I do know is that Disney is a master at PR and can spin anything in whatever direction they want to. They're masters at this. And that we've seen it. We've seen them controlling the narrative in the press. That's only one side of the argument. And we don't know how much is true and how much is not true, right? That's only one side of the argument. It's coming from the company in question. So I think you always have to process that information with a high level of skepticism, I think. I find it very hard to believe that there has been no communication between the state and Disney. I think that would be absurd. If that's true, that is absurd. And the state is absolutely in the wrong. I do think it's more of Disney does not want to follow the guidelines that are laid out because they were able to get away with more in a less strict environment, such as the state of Florida. So yeah, I think that's more the realistic thing here. This is a huge company, and huge companies pull a lot of strings to try to avoid paying taxes and a lot of stuff like that. Disney no exception. So it's hard to know. I do think on the other end, though, it's possible that the state should have been stronger with communication, but I highly doubt there's been just no communication and there's been just radio silence from Governor Newsom's office. I find that very hard to believe.
Yeah, and that's sort of something I'd like to touch on as well is this sort of supposed war between the state of California and Disneyland, as of recently. Now, I've seen arguments from both sides. I've seen people bashing the state for not cooperating with Disney to try and get the parks reopened. People saying the parks need to be reopened. The cast members need to go back to work, which is a very valid argument. But then you also have people on the other side, taking the complete opposite side, taking instead of taking Disney's side, taking the state side. Why does Disney, they should be reopening with these guidelines. But, given the context that we've gotten from both sides, I'd like to propose the question to you guys. Who would you believe is quote-unquote in the wrong here? Or I guess who would you side with? Would you side with state of California, who's taken, all of these months to get these proposed reopening guidelines to the parks, who have supposedly not been in contact with Disney themselves or any other theme parks, because this doesn't just apply to Disney, this applies to all theme parks in California. Do you take the government side? Would you take Disney's side? Of course, Jeremy touched on Disney pushing this narrative of, the government being unable to cooperate with them, radio silence, as some have said. For me, I'm torn between the two because, like I mentioned, there's probably sides that we're never going to get to, that will never surface, that, could be sway me one way or the other. But Jeremy, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's so absurd at this point, the information that we're getting, that I it's not really that I'm taking sides. I'm not necessarily on the side of the state of California or the side of the Walt Disney Company. I'm on the side of I think there's sort of the third side, which is all of us, right? Like everyone just sort of in the dark trying to figure out, put the pieces together, like the actual people, right? Actual people. And that includes cast members as well, who are also kept in the dark about all this process. And then, their jobs are on the line for it. So we'll talk more about that in a second. So, I mean, I'm on the side of reopening Disneyland with proper guidelines to ensure the safety of cast members, to ensure the safety of guests. That's, I guess, leans more so to the state of California, but I don't know if they've been handling it well, so I'm not fully on their side either. So I kind of want to remove myself from taking sides. I do approach this topic, though, with a high level of skepticism toward a company as big and large as the Walt Disney Company, though.
Yeah, and, I agree with Jeremy, but there's something that I was going to say. Abram in chat said, guidelines for California are impossible to meet. The yellow tier requires less than 1 in 100,000 to test positive for 3 weeks. OC, Orange County, can never meet that in this landscape. So, yeah, from the arguments that I've been seeing is that the guidelines were too strict. Disney couldn't meet the guidelines within, maybe a month or so. It'd take them a good long while to, well, I guess not just Disney, but the state of California in general, Orange County, would take them a while to finally reach that yellow tier. And I believe you have to be in the yellow tier for at least, it was either at least a week or at least 2 weeks until, it becomes official. So it would take, at least a month or so for the state of California to finally get to that yellow tier point so the parks can reopen. So that was one of the other sides of the argument that I've been seeing, of course.
And that just goes back to how just the bare bones, what we've been talking about for months, this sort of the really complicated time that we're in, where there is a pandemic. Yes, it is dangerous. Yes, it is around. No, it's not fully under control in this country. It goes back to that first sort of mental debate of, yes, we want things to reopen just because, of course, we want things to go back to normal. We also want to go back to work. I do. Everyone does. There's a lot of economic insecurity and anxiety going on. I can speak to that personally. you know. And so we want our jobs to return. We want, we want places to open, but places, it's complicated. If Orange County doesn't have it under control, it's like it just goes back to that complicated thing where it's like, yes, the parks do need to open. It's just, I don't know, it's so complicated, and I don't really know. And I think both of those things have a lot of weight. I don't think one necessarily outweighs another, but they both crash down on you with equal weight, so it's pretty heavy. But it's like it's just complicated. It's just absolutely complicated.
It is very complicated, and like I mentioned, this topic does tie into our next topic, which we'll be getting into here in just a bit. But yeah, so that's basically the rundown of the recent drama that's been going on. And it is just very strange because you see images on screen here from Mice Chat. You see these sort of inside images taken. I believe some of these pictures were taken from from the turnstiles. Beyond the gates looking in. You see all these signs set up inside the parks, social distancing signs, like the parks, they could reopen tomorrow with all these signs and, warnings and all that kind of stuff up. That's what it makes you think. And so, it's just adding fuel to the fire. People sort of taking that into trying to make their predictions as to when Disneyland will open. Just in March, we could have made our predictions that Disney would open, in October, in August. Now it's very interesting because I do think it is very interesting as well that the state did sort of bend to Disney's, I guess not just Disney's, but to the theme parks' sort of will when it comes to not releasing the proposed guidelines, because of course they were leaked. Disney saw them, told the state to pull back on them, and and they did. And so now, from my understanding, they're back into discussions, hopefully trying to figure out what would be best to do moving forward. But that is sort of an interesting point, at least for me, that the state was willing to sort of retract those initial proposed guidelines for Disney and the theme parks. And like I mentioned, we haven't even touched on Bob Iger quitting the Economic Task Force that we just, we reported on that just a few months ago. Bob Iger coming in to try and, help the economy of California, and now he steps down in regards of all this drama. Jeremy, how do you think that would affect, not just the company, but everything going forward?
Again, there's so much we don't know, right? But Bob Iger leaving the task force could mean a number of things. It could have been that genuinely they were not gonna help him out at all, and there was complete radio silence, and they just were dismissing reopening the parks, and he got frustrated and left. I think that's possible. It's also possible that they laid out very strict guidelines, and he got frustrated with that as well. I think that's probably more likely than nothing at all. But again, it just goes back to that complicated thing of, it's like in the long run, it's like there's livelihoods on the line economically, absolutely. I mean, everyone can speak to that personally, but there's also like physical lives on the line too. So if you really want to make sure that these parks open safely, safer than they are in Florida, it's unfair to compare it to the rest of the world, since they do have the virus far more under control than we do here. And California is a big state, right? California is a huge state with a huge population. It can be its own self-sufficient country.
Sure.
We don't want to, we want to make sure that death toll does not go up, or the case numbers. We don't want to make sure those go up, like we saw with Florida. They reopened Disney World in one of their largest spikes, and it's still, it fluctuates, obviously, but Florida is smaller than California, so can you imagine that on such a larger scale? I know people say there's been no cases directly tied to the theme parks. Well, that's not completely true. There have been cast members and departments that it swept through, but Disney doesn't communicate that to other departments and cast members. They like to keep things very controlled, the narrative very controlled, that it's safe. I think their priority is guest safety, not cast member safety. Unfortunately, that's just a lesson you learn the hard way working for any company. um, but they need to understand that guest safety is cast member safety. So, and I think in California, they're trying to ensure that there's comprehensive safety, not just for guests, not just for the whole state of California, but for the people who work for the company. So, and I don't know if Disney's wants to make the investment to ensure that.
Yeah, and I guess it is sort of interesting to sort of put into context this Orange County and sort of Disneyland's relation, because you could make the argument that Disneyland built, what Orange County is today, the Anaheim area, bringing all the tourism there. So you could make the assumption that the state owes Disney in that sense, since if Disneyland is closed, then that most of the tourists that come in will go away. No tourism will come in. So it's very interesting if you put that into context as well. But Jeremy, unless you have any final thoughts on this topic, I think we can go ahead and continue on here.
Yeah, we can move on.
We can move on, everybody. Yeah, well, like I said, our two topics are very intertwined with each other. But but before we get into our COVID rundown and before we get into our second topic, let's go ahead and take a very quick break. A very quick break and to hear about the show's sponsors. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live. And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. And we're back, everybody, from that very brief ad break.
Matt's too scared to eat on the screen.
Well, it's not that I'm scared, it's that I'm talking a lot. So
okay.
I can't. Well, anyways, for our second topic of the day, like I said, both of our first and main, or I guess I forgot we have the COVID headlines rundown, and my soundboard is still broken. I couldn't find a way to fix it without restarting my computer, so shout out to my Stream Decks for that. But for our COVID headline rundown, we only have two headlines here that were of noteworthy. Disney is converting Stage 17 in DCA to the quote-unquote backlot premiere shop. That's the right camera angle. To the backlot premiere shop gift shop. And as many of you guys know, that the Stage 17 sort of building in DCA was used to, I think it was used for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire sort of game set thingamabob. And now they've converted that into like, I think it was described as an almost like a one-stop shop for all of the merchandise found in downtown Disney. So it is, interesting as to why would they open that when you can just go to downtown Disney and get the merchandise. But anyways, second and final COVID headline here. Disney is using artificial intelligence bag check systems at the Disneyland Resort. Now, this system was first used in Animal Kingdom, Epcot, and I believe Hollywood Studios as well, and is also the same scanners that detected a gun in a bag's guest in Epcot in this past July. So really great track record, I guess you could say, for these scanners. So shout out to Disney for finally upgrading their security checkpoints. This should obviously make bag checks a lot faster. But that does it for our COVID headlines rundown today. And for our final topic here today, this really came as a shock This sort of statement, the announcement, whatever you want to call it, from the Walt Disney Company. 28,000 layoffs occur across the parks division. Now, this past Tuesday, Disney released a statement signed by Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro stating that 28,000 layoffs would occur across his parks division. That includes Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Imagineering, and retail stores. And Workers United Local 50, union requesting food and beverage, or union representing food and beverage workers at Disneyland, was informed that 2,800 members would be laid off. 6,700 non-union positions are to be lost in Walt Disney World, 6,246 of which being frontline cast members and administrative positions at TDO, Team Disney Orlando. And, of course, another blow here. Imagineering is set to lose 400 of its talented cast members and artists. So I guess we can sort of just pause just right there, because this is such a big announcement coming from Disney, and you can make the argument that this was inevitable. This was going to happen, at one point or another, from the parks being closed. But just your initial reaction, Jeremy. What are your thoughts here on Disney laying off, thousands and thousands of cast members?
Oh, well, it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic that, and I feel for all of the cast members who have been affected by this. I have no words. And, I think it's appropriate to let them, grieve and not sort of keep bombarding them with this in the news cycle. But we do have to cover it, though, at least once on this show. It's very complicated. I agree it probably was inevitable. With that being said, then using it as a sort of PR strategy is not a good look for Disney, and they've been called out for it the past week. And I think it's absolutely nothing but a PR strategy, whether it was inevitable or not. I mean, there's a more sensitive way to handle this than to use it as a part of their PR initiative to shift the entire blame of reopening Disneyland on the state of California. Like, look, state of California, you are responsible for these people's livelihoods. No, you're the company. You're responsible for their livelihoods. You decided to dangle their jobs in front of them, in front of the state of California, to try to get them to kowtow to whatever you want the guidelines to be. That's the only way. It's the only way this can be interpreted, I feel. I mean, there's multiple ways to interpret it, but for me, it always goes back to that, no matter what avenue you go down on. And, like a month ago, the senior executives, their pay cuts ended, and they have restored all of their 7-figure salaries. And the fact that it was not an obligation for them to relook at their salaries and relook at their that pay cut situation before pulling the stunt, I think it's absolutely inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. If you're a good company, and if you want to be a company that actually walks the walk in terms of valuing the people who work for you, as Josh D'Amaro tried to describe in this press release, then you got to act. You got to actually perform that act. You have to say, I'm going to continue to not take my salary if it saves another few thousand people their jobs and livelihoods. I just think that the fact that wasn't even on, and again, there's so much behind the scenes we don't know. A lot of people are really coming down hard on Josh D'Amaro for this decision. I think he's absolutely complicit because he went through and carried it out, right? But decisions like this, it most likely came from pressure from Chapek and the board of directors, right? The Chapek and the board of directors, they're sitting down, they're looking at charts, they're looking at numbers, they're looking at budgets. They aren't looking at people's lives. Josh D'Amaro is more closely connected with cast members, and I believe him in that it was a hard decision for him, but I do not believe it was his ultimate decision. This is something that absolutely comes from Chapek and the board of directors. But then again, he still carried it out. So he is still responsible.
Yeah.
And he's still taking home his 7-figure salary. So the fact, and we don't know what the drama was in board meetings. We don't know if Josh D'Amaro stood up and said, we need to have our, our our salaries cut again. I don't want to have to fire my cast member. We don't know if there was an epic battle conversation about that, but all we know is the result. They didn't cut their pay. They didn't cut their salaries again, and they decided to fire 28,000 people, minimum wage people. Not just minimum wage people from all different. There's Imagineers who are being fired. They decided to ruin people's livelihoods that work under them, not take the bullet themselves as a PR strategy to put pressure on the state of California. I think Disney should be ashamed of themselves.
I agree, and we'll touch more on Josh tomorrow here in a little bit. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you guys, I personally follow a lot of cast members on Twitter. Sad to say, now former cast members, which is just horrible. Cast members have been reaching out on Twitter, voicing their disbelief and sadness and, anger with Disney, rightfully so. And of course, tomorrow's statement was released, like we just mentioned before in our previous topic, during a time of heated debate between Disney and the state of California over the theme park reopening guidelines. And like Jeremy touched, many feel as though the layoffs were announced to put pressure on the government of California to release guidelines sooner. And, it worked. The guidelines got leaked, but then Disney went ahead and just rejected the guidelines outright. So, whatever that will, take that into account as well. And Damara was also reportedly seen in downtown Disney last week, consoling cast members who had just lost their jobs. And like I said, we'll touch more on Josh tomorrow, a little closer to the end of the topic. But I want to touch more again on the statement itself, the wording of the statement. Like Jeremy mentioned, and like I mentioned before, the thing I find most odd about the whole event was the phrasing of the announcement. It says, quote, "In light of the prolonged impact of COVID-19 on our business, including limited capacity due to physical distancing requirements and the continued uncertainty regarding the duration of the pandemic, exasperated by California by the state's unwillingness to lift restrictions that would allow Disney to open." That's sort of the key sentence there. "We have made the decision to reduce our workforce at the parks." And the term I used on Twitter was that it was like a threat from Disney to the state of California. I don't necessarily know if that's the right wording that should be used in this context, but either way, this obviously, like Jeremy mentioned, was a PR stunt directed straight at the state of California. Disney, of course, trying to continue to push the narrative that the state has, not been willing to work with Disney and the other theme parks to get these guidelines out to the public to help the parks reopen again. And like we just touched on in our past topics. So yeah, that the wording of this statement, of course it rubbed me the wrong way initially when I read it. And I think this was also posted the same day as some other big Disney movie announcement or some other big announcement that I can't remember right off the top of my head to try and sweep it under the press, but of course that didn't happen. But I'd like to talk about the man, the myth himself, Josh D'Amaro, our savior. He was supposed to be our savior coming up from the ranks. Just a few months ago, we were praising him for the work and dedication that he's shown into the parks. And of course, that was recognized when he was promoted to the parks chairman just a few months ago. And now, here we are, however many months later, with him signing off on the statement here of all these layoffs. It's a complicated question because Jeremy already stated we don't know necessarily what the behind the scenes has been looking like. But do you, and I guess this is not just to Jeremy but to everybody else, do you guys trust Josh D'Amaro going forward? Because like I mentioned, he was supposed to be our savior moving forward, one of the only executives from what we've seen to actually care about the parks, to actually care about not just the parks, but the cast members also. All these cast members that were talking about him when he finally got promoted, they were saying nothing but nice things about him. Jeremy, do you trust Josh moving forward?
I don't trust anyone who makes over $1 million. But anyway,
That's fair. That's fair.
no, but I do trust him moving forward. His, he's still Josh tomorrow. He's still, is an executive, but also understands the human aspects of the job that he has. I think that I do trust him. I think it's important the important lesson I think that I've been learning is I think we were very naive as a community to think that the new head of parks and consumer products and whatever the new merger thing of that restructured department is that we have to remember that we were not saved from Chapek. Chapek got the ultimate promotion. Okay,
That's true. Yeah.
doesn't matter who's in that position. Now, I'd like to think that he's going to be the opposing voice in this administration, if you will, the Chapek era. But in a company, these are not elected officials, man. Josh tomorrow, if he gets too vocal, could be out of there in 2 seconds. So we'll see. I have less trust, or I guess I have less trust than I even had before for Bob Chapek. Absolutely,
Sure.
fundamentally. And by the way, where's been his statement consoling cast members? I haven't seen no things. I haven't seen a thing. And Iger as well.
I was
Haven't
just
seen
going to
a
bring up, Bob. Where do you guys see? Oh, sorry to interrupt. Where do you guys
that's
see
fine.
Bob Iger moving forward? Your view on him, of course, stepping down from economic task. We've praised Bob in the past, of course, bringing on the second renaissance of the movies, and of course all these great expansions coming to the parks. And of course Iger stepping down, being silent along with Bob Chapek. But I guess we can sort of push Bob, Chapek to the side at least, because we know that he most likely had some part in this. But Bob Iger moving forward, I'd like to hear what Jeremy as well as what you guys in the chat have to think about Bob Iger moving forward.
My view of Bob Iger fluctuates. I have this weird love-hate thing with him. I think any attempt to save his legacy is just over. I don't think that people are going to look back at the Iger years as some kind of golden age. I think the way it'll be studied in history is Iger represents the ultimate execution. Right? Eisner was the transition from this basically an artistic company, a movie studio that builds and creates things, to he transitioned it to it becoming a multinational media conglomerate, right? He was responsible for transitioning into that to save itself, right? So that Disney could not just be functioning at a loss as it has been since Walt came up with any crazy idea. So Iger is the ultimate carrying forward of that transition. It's okay, we're a multinational media conglomerate, we're going to act like it. And so the Iger years are about international expansion. They're about being a media conglomerate and less about a creative force, right? So I've noticed it. I've noticed it in the parks. I've noticed it in the movies. I know it's kind of a debate in the community, but this just kind of puts the nail on the head for me. Again, I don't know how much of this comes from Iger or Chapek, but it definitely comes from one of the two, plus the board of directors and the shareholders, absolutely, with no consideration of actual human being people. So, yeah, I just think I don't think any of the Bobs are going to be remembered too fondly in this period of Disney history. As hindsight starts to develop, Mulan was the eye opener to, oh wow, Disney, of course, they're a media conglomerate, internet, they were seeking international expansion, and this is the consequence of that, right? So I don't know, we're just learning a lot about the past 15 years of the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah, Bree said in chat, society has moved past the need for Bobs, which is a pretty funny...
Perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think someone had some confusion as well. These layoffs do, of course, include not just the Disneyland cast members, but Walt Disney World cast members as well. And I believe some of the retail stores, and I think someone mentioned the cruise ships as well. So that is, the departments or parts of the company that are affected by these layoffs. Now, this is sort of interesting sort of question here. Is this worse than Disney in the 80s before Michael Eisner came in? Is this worse than the fallout of Euro Disneyland? How would you guys rank sort of this era of I guess not necessarily the parks, but just where the company is at?
That's a really good question, Matt. You're becoming a journalist. I like
this.
As I cough, I'm dying. Okay. Wait, what was the question again? Oh, how does it compare? Okay. To pre-Eisner. Okay, I understand the question now. It's different. That's my answer. It's different. To compare this back to back with the same conditions of, the animation studio in the 70s and 80s to the parks, in the 90s and early 2000s. It's a whole different thing. I do think this is bigger. I do think this is a lot bigger.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's going to affect all of, it's hard to know because Disney's such a humongous company. It's hard to know just how much it is going to affect the creative output. I think their creative output has been kind of meh, but that's just me. Anyway, so high budget, but meh. Anyway, not always. There's been some great stuff. Obviously, Rise of the Resistance. I don't want to get into it, but there's been a lot of great stuff. But but it's different. I think that's my ultimate answer. Is it's different, and we'll see. We'll see how it affects the creative output of the company. I do think, though, this period, you asked like what this period will be looked at. I do think this is the peak of the empire. I do think the empire, Disney the multinational media conglomerate, is, as all empires do, it's all about to crumble away. That doesn't mean no more Disney. It just means perhaps might be a good thing to just be an artistic organization, a movie studio that builds and that does the best of what they do. Maybe they don't need to own ABC. Maybe they don't need to own other companies to do that, right? Perhaps that'll happen. I personally don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think any company should be as big as Disney. I certainly don't think any company should swallow up other companies the way Disney does. So we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. And this does sort of feel like almost like the end of an era, or at least like the start, or the almost like nearing the end of like a chapter in like Disney history. If this were like a book, this would be nearing the end of, maybe we could call it the Eisner era. I don't know. I'm not a writer.
Yeah, the end of the Iger era, the beginning of the Chapek era, and the Chapek era may not be. Chapek era might be the fall, so we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess to sort of leave off here, because this is, of course, just a horrible position that the Walt Disney Company is in. Of course, you have, like we talked about a few episodes ago, we have Mulan releasing, the controversy coming out from that. Mulan not doing well, at the box office, at least not to what Disney thought would happen. Mulan not doing as well on Disney Plus. We see Disney pushing back all of these Marvel movies. I'm assuming that they were going to try and release them on Disney Plus to after they saw how Mulan would have done. Disney, of course, pushing those movies back to next year instead of releasing them on Disney Plus. Of course, we have just the back and forth, the drama between the state of California and Disneyland, and of course now we've ended here. This is where we are now. All these layoffs of all these cast members. It just feels like it's just, I don't know. No one could have predicted any of this. Back in March, back in February, we would have probably thought that the parks would have been closed for a few months maybe, and then they'd reopen, but Excuse me. But now here we are. All these cast members are jobless. I know a lot of my friends are cast members. They've been having to apply to other jobs as well. Very it's really sad because a lot of cast members who work for the Walt Disney Company joined to try and help continue on Walt's legacy of the parks and everything. And a lot of the people are dedicated to their job just because of that, because of the legacy that Walt Disney left for them, trying to carry on that legacy moving forward. And a lot of these cast members, I'm sure, carried on that philosophy, and now they're gone. It's just really
And
hard.
that's the thing with Disney that I think is actually unique with other, to itself, is that people who want to work for Disney, they want to work for Disney. It doesn't matter in what capacity. Like someone who is a cast member, they want to be there. That's very rare, right? So when the company that you were really loyal to and dedicated to and were passionate about just kind of uses you as a pawn like this, it feels so wrong to me, and I just feel so bad for all of the cast members and Imagineers that are affected by this.
Imagineers as well. And I guess it's sort of a tough question to propose here. Where do you see this is of course to everybody but as well to Jeremy, where do you guys see the company moving forward from here? How does Disney progress? Of course, probably one of their main goals is to get Disneyland Resort open as soon as possible. Besides that, where would you see Disney moving forward from here?
Well, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It is still a humongous company. If $11.78 billion is less than what you made the year before, you're still a pretty good company, right? I don't think Disney's going anywhere anytime soon. They also just own so much that it would be impossible for them to go anywhere anytime soon. But that being said, I do see them slashing budgets.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big and successful they are as a company. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll see something like a Galaxy's Edge or a Pandora anytime soon to that degree, right? That makes me Epcot must be cursed, right? I mean, it went through 2 decades of absolute neglect, which formed a public opinion that it was obsolete and irrelevant. And that it was just the nature of the park itself, and not that it just wasn't, treated with any sort of respect from the company. And now they were at least going to put a huge budget into it to at the very least, make it aesthetically have this aesthetic renewal in the park. We could talk about the content at a later date. I have a whole lot of theories about that, but as I've talked about some of them on the show. But and that budget's just gonna be wha-bum, wha-bum, bum, bum. It's just gonna be. I'm very worried about the future of Epcot. It might just be like a Disney California Adventure, where it's just like a random spattering of different things with nice looking ish areas. I hope not, though, because that park deserves so much more than that. But I'm very worried about the future of that park now that they're going to be slashing budgets left and right.
Yeah, and I guess in regards to the budgets, I mean, you'd think, I guess at least when it comes to like in the past, we've notated like the words slashed budgets to like late 90s, early 2000s, cast members, just maintenance in general going down. You'd think Disney would have learned their lesson from back then and would not try and do that kind of thing moving forward now. So I guess we'll see how that goes moving forward. Of course, like Jeremy said, we're not going to see another Galaxy's Edge. Of course, Marvel Land isn't even done being built yet in California Adventure. And of course, we have New Tomorrowland that was supposed to come for Disneyland. But I guess it's interesting. Like I said, this is really, in my opinion, nearing the end of this chapter of the Walt Disney Company. And I remember I asked myself that's question a few years ago, I think, when we first started the podcast. Where do we see this sort of chapter of Disney ending? Here it is, 2,800 cast members laid off. And on that note as well, There's a pinned comment in the chat, and as well as I'll have a link down in the description as well to from a great tweet by Tiffany Mink to help ways to help all cast members. There's the cast member pantry, of course, and as well there's a really great spreadsheet that she put together that has links to many cast members like Etsy shops and Depop shops, or Depop, I think that's how it's pronounced. So you can try and help the cast members, help them directly, as opposed to like donating to what is it, cast member pantry, which you should still do. So links to all that will be down in the description. And yeah, like I mentioned, we have a lot of friends who are cast members. A lot of people who watch the show, of course, are cast members. And it's just really, it bothers me a lot that they released the statement before, a majority of these cast members haven't even been told if they still have a job yet. Because, some of my friends, my cast member friends are still in limbo, haven't gotten the call yet. People, just today have been getting their calls, I've seen on Twitter, and this statement was released last week.
Yeah,
and that's just another thing that just sort of rubs me the wrong way about it all. But yeah, the end of an era, and like I said, we really do feel for all these, all these cast members. If you can in any way, try and support them with the link that I've used down in the description, as well as, like I said, pinned here in the comment section. Or in the chat, I should say. But Jeremy, unless you have any final thoughts on this topic, I think it might be time to wrap up here.
I don't.
No thoughts. Wow. Well, we managed to speed run this episode, I guess, of the show. Well, we do have one voicemail here in queue that didn't really pertain to any of the topics, so I decided to save it here for the end. Let's go ahead and take a listen here from... of course, there's no name in the transcript. There's no name here. So let's go ahead and see who and what this voicemail might entail.
Hey, guys. I was learning with Disney Plus, and nothing really new going on with the exception of The Mandalorian. Why don't they just bring back All the Wonderful World of Disney's hosted by Walt Disney himself? I mean, what's stopping him from doing it? All right. Great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Good question.
It's still going, but he's stopped talking.
Oh, it's still going.
There is no name attached to that, so thank you to whoever sent in that voicemail. Yeah, a good question. We've been asking ourselves that question ever since, November of last year when Disney Plus finally released. Slowly but surely, I think they put out one so far, one new one that wasn't added at launch.
There's a couple of them. Nothing, nothing that we haven't already seen. It's great to have an HD restoration of them. But I'm with you. I am on Disney Plus because I still am holding out that we're going to get all of that television archive opened wide up, and we're going to see content that we have not seen before, or content that is so much better instead of the crappy VHS rips that people post on YouTube, or Disney Treasure rips that people post on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, I know back in April they announced that Disneyland Goes to the World's Fair, one of the best episodes of The Wonderful World of Color, was going to be coming to Disney Plus. I was really looking forward to it. It was supposed to be there in May. It has yet to be there.
Where is it, Disney?
I don't think they realize that there is such a huge base of people who want that content and who will, renew their subscription for that content. But I'm with you. WandaVision, though, is coming out. I think that's going to be up there with Mandalorian in terms of, fans. I don't know if it's going to be like one of the best series of the year kind of deal, but it'll be interesting. I think people will like that. People who like the MCU are going to like that. But I'm with you. I got Disney Plus because I can watch all the movies that I want to watch, the animated movies. Mandalorian was kind of a cherry on top. I didn't need it, but I'm glad I watched it and I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next season, which is going to be coming out very soon.
Yeah.
And the Imagineering story. That was it. Imagineering story was good. It's done. It's so funny. There's been so much history, I feel like, in Imagineering, the path between where they ended and today. But we'll never get that's the thing. Once you get to the present day, you're not going to get a comprehensive history, because then it's just brand promotion, right?
Yeah.
So we won't know the drama of this time, of the creative battle and Imagineering between doing original work and just doing movie stuff. We won't know that until 20 years from now. But we can speculate. Anyway, I'm with you. Yeah, Disney Plus has some stuff, but hey, it is you can't, that is one of the that went from I just blew my mind the way Disney Plus just soared. I mean, at first it sounded like this absurd idea, like, oh God, is every company gonna have a streaming service? And what's the point? It's like, but Disney Plus proved that theory wrong. I mean, it's like the second most popular streaming service, right? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Next to Netflix or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone said in chat, I think it was Ben who said in chat, maybe the quality of the films are bad. I know for certain that they have, of course, I'm sure they have like the negatives, or they have at least a master copy that
have them.
It's very high quality. I've seen, they've shown clips, of course, in the Imagineering story from bits and pieces of the Disneyland USA sort of mini documentary thing, and as of course from the other World of Color shows that are just pristine, beautiful copies that they're just clinging on to for some reason. Of course, we can speculate for whatever reason why they're clinging on to them, but it really is a shame because. I've said this before, but as like a content creator and as like a video editor, having access to those like high quality copies of those specials and shows would just make my life so much easier. It'd make the at least the production quality of, I guess, not just our videos, but all other YouTubers, Disney YouTubers out there. So it's very strange. Hopefully, sometime soon. We said that about the Disneyland Goes to the World's Fair, but where is it, Disney? Bring it to us. We want it, please. Please.
And we know they have it. I mean, we know because they did a wonderful restoration for DVD. So, but that's not full HD. Imagine a beautiful full HD.
Anyway, well, I think on that note, it's time to go ahead and wrap up this week's episode of Matterhorn Mondays. This was, like I said, a really great episode, and I'd love to hear what you all have to think about the topics we discussed. Comment down below. Call in 575-386-58... Excuse me, 5814. If you'd like to voice your opinion on any of the topics that we discussed today. Josh, tomorrow, call in if you'd like to clear your name on any wrongdoing when it comes to
come on the show. That'd be great.
That would be amazing if we could have Josh. I mean, it's never going to happen, but we can dream.
That's right.
But of course, like I said,
and guys, the election's in less than a month.
Yes.
So,
the last day to register to vote was today, actually, I think, or tomorrow in New Mexico.
All right. So there you go. Okay, people. It's October 5th. I know in the state of California that those mail-in ballots have been mailed to people's addresses today. So you're going to be getting those if you're in California in the mail. And you're going to fill it out right away. And you're going to turn it in the same day. You're going to mail it back the same day. Or you're going to go physically drop it off. Or you're going to vote early. Okay. Vote.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, I think the deadline for most states is the 6th. I'm not sure. I just know that New Mexico was tomorrow, Tuesday the 6th. So if you guys are in New Mexico like I am, I'm already registered, so I don't have to. But yeah, of course, links to all of our socials will be down in the description like always. And of course, like I said, links to all to help fund the cast members from, what was the tweet here? From Tiffany Mink on Twitter, put down, like I said before, a really nice, comprehensive way to try and donate to all these cast members who have been affected by the layoffs. Go vote. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I don't think. Oh yeah, go Alex. Of course, Alex's channel is always linked down in the description below. I believe he put out a new Walt Disney episode this past week.
He did indeed.
Excuse me. Go watch that. Subscribe to Alex's channel. Watch all of his videos. He recently put out a really great history of the Magic Kingdom video. I remember he was very profound of saying that he was never going to do a history the Magic Kingdom, but here he is, and it was a really well put together video. I remember him talking about it, him finding the inspiration for it. I think he said something like focusing the story through Roy's eyes, trying to continue on his brother's dream was sort of the narrative that took place in that video. So go watch it. Subscribe to Alex. Haven asks, "Hey Matt, if you could eat one type of cheese, what would it be? Invisible cheese, tasteless cheese?"
He hates cheese. He hates cheese. I don't get it.
I mean, I like cheese on pizza. I don't know. Maybe I just haven't. I haven't tried it. Maybe I would like a cheeseburger. Maybe I would like mozzarella sticks.
I think you'd love a cheeseburger. I think you'd love mozzarella sticks.
It's just that I haven't tried. I mean, I like cheese on pizza. There's cheese on I like cheese on spaghetti and stuff. I don't know.
Then you like cheese. You're just being weird.
It's complicated. It's complicated. We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, on that note, thank you all for coming to today's episode. And of course, have a great